Well, inflation is caused by all this money we're spending, all this money we're printing here in Washington, D.C. For 12 years, I voted against every bit of that spending that I can. I know that Vicky Hartzler voted for 17 omnibuses, minibuses, continuing resolutions, but yet she'll stand at a Lincoln Day and say, we need to cut spending and the crowd will cheer. So let's get real about this. We need to cut spending in Washington to get our economy going again. I think that if you're talking about abortion, they always want to go to the rape and incest question. They don't want to talk about the millions and millions and millions of children that have been slaughtered since Roe v. Wade passed in 1973. This is a state's issue. They talked about the Supreme Court overruling Roe v. Wade. That didn't outlaw abortion. It just puts it back on the states, and that's where it should be. There's a young lady in Springfield, Missouri that's a producer on one of the radio programs down there, and her mother was raped at 13 years old and decided to go through with the pregnancy. So she'd probably be a pretty good one to go talk to if you want to find out why they should be allowed a chance at life. The first thing we need to do is quit vilifying being a police officer. That all this defund the police and everything that the Democrats and Joe Biden and the progressives have pushed over the last few years has put us in a terrible, terrible position. In Kansas City, Missouri, they didn't even have an officers class last year training people to be police officers because they couldn't find enough people. They're losing officers daily. Kansas City police officer pulled someone over the other day that was going to issue him a $35 ticket for expired tags, and that person got out and shot and killed that police officer. This thing of vilifying the police has got to stop. All this defund the police, we need to fund the police, we need to help them in every which way we can to stop all of this. Well, as everyone knows, we live in a democratic republic, and to preserve that, we need to make sure everyone's vote counts and to get people out to vote. If you're not confident in your voting system, you're not going to turn out to vote, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't even register to vote, and those that register to vote, a lot of them don't go to the polls on election day. And I think a lot of that goes back to the issues of voting, thinking that they're not fair elections. We need to do everything we can to make sure they're fair elections. The state legislatures are the ones that are supposed to change the laws on voting in every state according to the Constitution. That didn't happen last time in 2020. Secretary of States, judges, unelected folks on top of that changed their election laws willy-nilly. They mailed out ballots to everyone that ever lived in a house in Georgia. I've got a friend in Dallas that his mom lives in Minnesota. He got a ballot in his name mailed to his mom's house, and he hadn't lived there in 35 years. So we need to tighten up the voting laws and make sure that everyone knows their vote counts if we want to preserve our democratic republic. I think in Congress we need to do everything we can to work towards clean water, clean energy, clean air. Everyone in their right mind wants those things, but you have to be realistic, and you can't. You saw the ice storm down in Texas last year that caused all the havoc down there where they'd gone away from fossil fuels too soon, and we need to get off of fossil fuels as soon as possible, but we can't do it in an unrealistic fashion. I think that 9 is perfect, and I think that Democrats and Republicans need to come together and agree that it's not okay for someone to attempt to assassinate a justice on the Supreme Court. Justice Kavanaugh had someone show up at his house and driven out from California saying he wanted to kill Kavanaugh, and he had the means to do it on him. And the Democrats don't speak out against that. They tell them to chase them out of restaurants. They've told them to chase Republicans out of restaurants. We need to back off of all this vitriolic hatred and go back to loving each other and working together as a country. The First Amendment is by far my favorite because you have to have freedom of speech before you get any other freedoms. If you can't speak out and use your freedom of speech, then you're going to be in trouble. Without question, my most favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz. And as far as a book, I would have to say Blue Ocean Strategy. I give that out to everyone that I can. I think that it's thinking outside of the box on everything. One part of that book talks about circuses, how circuses were dying and live animal acts were dying, and they'd give you free tickets to go to the circus to sell you high-priced popcorn and toys. And along came Guy Lombardi, and he came up with Cirque du Soleil, which used people instead of animals. Instead of giving their tickets away, they were charging up in the hundreds of dollars, and it's worked extremely effectively. And the Blue Ocean Strategy talks about not swimming in the red ocean where everyone's competing and beating each other up and the water's bloody. You want to swim to the blue water. So Blue Ocean Strategy is definitely my favorite book. And as far as music, no, there's no contest here. Country music. And the older country music I like the better, to be honest. And George Jones's classic of He Stopped Loving Her Today has to be the all-time best country music ever written or sung.